Right. Welcome to the Frieza Method podcast, episode one of it. And really looking forward to today. I think today we want to dive into the story behind the Frieza Method and a little intro about the coaches who make all that happen, me, and obviously the hybrid raccoon. I think firstly I have to say English is not my mother language, so when I'm doing some grammar mistakes, sorry for that, but I think a little accent is like kind of sexy. I would say let's hop into that. Dylan, before we start, how are you doing today?
Nah, I'm doing good. It's a rainy day here in the States, down in North
Hmm.
Carolina. Um, we're playing this while little man's taking a nap, and you were just having a pretty relaxing Sunday afternoon. That said, Germany, well, German is not my mother language, so we're not gonna speak any of that. Because the only thing we're gonna get from me is yelling "Ich bin Bush" and Brucci. So like.
It's already pretty
I,
good.
Yeah, dude. I always love when people who speak English like as their second language or even third language, and they speak it like pretty darn well. Are like,
Hmm.
excuse me if I make a few grammar mistakes. Like, dude, we couldn't have a single like partial conversation in another language. So yeah, if y'all are jumping on Marcus for English mistakes, stop it.
Nah, good, Dylan. Good to have you on today. I think behind every successful coaching or business, I think there are people that are putting in the work behind the scenes. Um, I think you are one of the key people for TFM. So I think before we speak about myself or TFM, I would like to go over, yeah, your experience, your achievements, your sporting backgrounds, and everything you do in your life. So what do you think about when we start with just your sporting background? I think there's a lot to speak about.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very happy to be like a part of the TFM team and to get to work with you. And we'll, through kind of going through my sporting background, we'll get to how we met and everything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started like a pretty normal upbringing in America, sports wise, just kicking around a soccer ball primarily as a kid. Um, and played that, from ages 5 up until about 12. It was never very like skilled at. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't like, oh man, this kid is a really good soccer player or anything to that effect. Um, about the time I turned 13 was when I got introduced into cross country running. So I picked up cross country and track and field going into middle school, high school. So ages like 13 through 18, I was running, and early on I was decent. Nothing special. And then about 16 years old was when I started showing like some potential in the sport. But again, it was nothing that was going to get like major colleges or universities to want me as an athlete. So, I think looking back now at like where I started from early on as an athlete to being to the point I am now within HYROX, it's very different. Like nobody would have picked me at 16 or 17 years old to ever take a world stage in any kind of sport. I was a decent runner, very skinny build, still have a very skinny build, and that kind of stands out compared to the other athletes that I line up against a lot. But so heading towards my final year of high school, I end up getting a back injury, and that really took me out of sports for close to 2.5, 3 years. So from almost 18 to nearly 21, I was inconsistently able to do anything fitness wise. I was in constant pain and had issues running down the right side of my leg, and it prevented me from running or competing for the majority of college. And so again, like this is not the this is not really the foundation that you would want to have to create like a really strong background for an athlete. And it wasn't until 21 years old that I finally got back healthy, got my back kind of fixed, and started competing again. And so I got to do 1 year in college as a cross country runner, and then that was kind of the end of my like distinct running career. And by that point, we're in 2019. So this is a year after HYROX as a sport has even started. I've still not heard of it yet. I did notice that I had a bit of a skill of being able to run and then do other things and not slow down very much. And so I took that over to Spartan racing and started doing a little bit of that. And again, early on was okay, not like super successful. I would go finish, top five, grab a podium here or something like that, but it was never that great. But I only had 1 year of it under my belt. So we get to 2020, and I started thinking, okay, I'm really going to get into it. I'm going to start working on my technical aspects of obstacles. I'm going to start working on my trail running, all that kind of stuff. And after one race that season, COVID happens, and everything gets shut down. So in that time frame, the world really slowed down from an event standpoint. And I'm working my job to the best of the ability that I can, working in the field of ergonomics and injury prevention. But a lot of like human interaction has been cut down. So I can't travel nearly as much. And I'm just at home. And, a lot of people, they went through a, a lot of different responses to that COVID period. Some people really shut down. Like, activity levels dropped off, depression really rose. It was hard on folks. For me, I didn't love the isolation aspect of it, but I did spend a lot of time just training. Just I was on a bike, I was running, I was in the woods, I was lifting whatever weights I had at home. And it was in that time frame that the HYROX VCF like came across. And that was, kind of the origins of me getting into the sport. I got into the bodyweight division. I did the bodyweight VCF the first time. I won the age group and finished in like 10th or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's not bad. And so by this point, the world's starting to open back up a little bit. I watched the first HYROX VCF championship, which was what you ended up winning. And I've done that finals workout so many times at this point, and I still don't think I've done it faster than you yet. But I've tried. I've tried that damn 5K, the burpees with the dumbbells over the rower, and the 150 wall. Like I've tried it so many times. I need to give it another shot now that I'm better at rowing. And so the second VCF rolls around, and they use that as a qualifier for a big race down in Texas. And they're like, if you finish top three in the VCF, we'll get you into this elite wave. And that elite wave was going to include like some elite level CrossFitters. It was going to have Hunter McIntyre in it. And so I was trying to get into that, and I think I finished sixth. But I looked at the test that they gave him, the VCF, and the longest test was 20 minutes, I believe. And I just said, that doesn't line up to the race. And I knew my skill set was when a race gets longer than 45 minutes. And so booked a ticket, flew down to Dallas, and was like, I'm not going to get in that elite wave, but that's fine. I'm just going to race the pro race. We're going to race the same course. Fine. Yeah. It's going to show.
For all the listeners that are maybe new to HYROX, I think the Virtual Championships was something HYROX brought up to basically create an online competition or give athletes something to compete in during like COVID times. So it worked in a way where you had to film videos, upload them, you got a score for it, and then they had a worldwide ranking. And like the first one was the one Dylan spoke about, which I win. And after that, they brought up another one, which basically gave athletes a chance to qualify for that Dallas race when actual events started to happening again. You could qualify for that.
Yeah. And honestly, it was a great move by HYROX to do that VCF.
Absolutely.
That really grew the sport. And I mean, also, I believe you came out of the VCF and raced the 2020, the Elite 12.
Yep.
Where you got to have a lot of fun with that sled. So
story for later. Yeah.
Yeah, the story for later. But either way, that's to say, back in 2020 and 2021, the sleds were a little bit different than they are now. Quite heavier. So yeah, so I don't get into that second VCF, but I go to Dallas anyway, and show up and race and end up running 65 something. And if you looked at the times on the day, That was, the third fastest time of everybody. There was Hunter, there was Megita, and then there was me. And I think that shocked a lot of people because I show up, I'm, 73 kilos. I'm not built like somebody who should be able to push and pull sleds. And objectively, my times for those movements were not that good. Um, and they definitely needed improving to be able to compete. But that was my first intro into the sport. And it was a very wild, just like escalation from there. So I race Dallas. I win the pro wave. I'm third fastest on the day. I go to Chicago a couple of months later, U.S. Championships, and I finish second. And then all of a sudden, we're over in Germany. Um, and in the intervening time, you and I had met and we had started messaging back and forth on Instagram. We were trading workouts, and got to find that we got along well. So you kind of opened the doors for me and said, "Hey, you're coming over to Germany. You've got a place to stay. Come stay with us." So me and my now wife, we flew over, stayed with you, and then drove, across the country with you guys to Leipzig, Germany to compete in world championships together. And I think that's kind of the beginning origins of our friendship and getting to TFM. Because if you can spend 8 hours in a car driving across the country with somebody that you like barely know, and the whole time you're just talking and having fun, you
Exactly.
get along pretty well. So so we get our first world championship experience together. Um, and from there, things have really gone well for me in the sport. So my first world championships, I finished sixth. I come back the next year, end up finishing fifth in Las Vegas. Um, Come the year after that, I'm second at North American Championships. Don't have a great race at World Championships. Have to learn how to fail on a big stage, and then bounce back and see what it's like to, show up thinking you're ready to go, have a bad day, and be like, I have to put it all back together for another season. And then came back and probably had my best season in the sport this last year, where the times changed a little bit because the sport changed a little bit. But
Mhm.
I came out and managed to run a 55:34, and then 6 days later win the U.S. Championships in 56:37. Punched my ticket to Worlds. Was somewhat competitive at Worlds this year, but kind of fell apart late in the race and didn't have exactly what I wanted. Um, but then en route, the 2 days later, was able to race with David Megita, win a doubles age group world championship. And I look back at the season and I go, okay, I've got a national championship, I've got an age group world championship, and I've got a relay world record. Um, and again, when you look back at almost 10 to 12 years ago, the 16-year-old kid that I was as an athlete would have never imagined that I could get to that level.
Mm.
And in the process of doing all this, again, you and I, we talked, we traded ideas, we talked training, and we found that we had a similar training philosophy, and idea about how to create a good athlete in this sport. And we'll end up getting to the TFM side of things, but it was after that Washington race that I was like, hey, we spent another, couple of days together. You flew over here. We stayed together in an Airbnb. This time I had another person with me because we had August. So you got to hang out with him and meet my son and everything. And it was
Cool
in that
guy.
time that you were like, yeah, we watched a lot of track. Um, that you had TFM going for what, a little over a year at that point?
I think we have been online for like 1.5 years at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, and there had always been kind of the conversation between us, like, hey, if you ever want to coach together, let's work together. And it was finally at that point that I felt comfortable that I had enough stability in my job, and then like
Mm.
the time to be able to work together, because I think both of us feel the same way. If we're gonna do something, we want to do it well. And I knew that if I worked with you, I wanted to make sure that I had the capacity to do well with the athletes I worked with. Because again, at the end of the day, it's the Friesen method. It's your last name, and you're trusting me to work with athletes that have come in under an umbrella like that. So I was like, I can't fuck this up. Um, so it started, we finally started kind of a business relationship together about 4 months ago. And I think things have been going really well. Um, and that kind of
Absolutely.
brings us, yeah, that brings us up to where we are now. And so kind of people know about my background, they know about me in the sport. And so tell a little bit about, your background, because we had very different, I think, experiences early on to get to where we are now.
Yeah, yeah. I think just shortly before we dive into that, I think with your background, you will be able to help a lot of more athletes in the future. You're absolute workhorse, not just in terms of training, as people know, but also on the coaching side of things. I think you are much more than an 80K row week as a coach, as a personality. So yeah, I'm super happy and thankful to have you on the team. Yeah, just looking forward to the future. And yeah, thanks for that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, my background, I mean, I think like totally different to yours. I think like sports, especially in younger ages in Germany, is totally different because like you don't get that much support from schools. We don't have those sporting systems. So basically everything you do in terms of sports is going to happen after school. I was super lucky that I found a good coach in the early years. I started cycling at the age of 6, got into that and like had someone in our little town that was just fully focused on cycling, cyclist or a cyclist by himself. His son was a cyclist, and they were training in our little village. So I joined a
And then
training session there.
real quick, at this point, which country are you in? Are you in Bulgaria or are you in
Germany,
Germany? You are in
Germany,
Germany at that point?
Germany,
Okay.
Germany. Yeah. So yeah, joined them for a first session. He said I'm like kind of talented. How talented you can be at the age of 6 in cycling, but yeah, he basically took training over and supported me for the next like 10, 11, 12 years, and those got like kind of successful. So I think I had a lot of wins like in the early years in terms of road cycling. A few bad years at the age of like 9 to 12, 13. But from that point, I started to like get bigger, grow higher, build some muscle, cyclist muscles. Boom. Yeah, and got like to a pretty decent level. I was driving for the German national team, I think from the age of 15 on. Yeah, was like international on course. Did a lot of different international races on a good high level. But yeah, as always in life, something happens. Sometimes you start to stop enjoying things. And I think that's just what happened at the age of 18, where I felt like, okay, I'm missing out. I'm just doing sports every day after school. Everyone in school is, going to parties, to the swimming pool in the summer or whatever, and you can't. And I wasn't at a sports school or something where I got that big support. Like my parents and my coach and everyone around me did everything possible, which now later with a more mature mindset, I'm super thankful for. But back then, I think just other things got like more important. So jumped out of cycling at like the age of 7, 18. Didn't did any sports for like a year or something until I started realizing, okay, hey, I just totally miss competing. That's my nature. I'm super competitive in everything I do. Um, was then looking for something I can do that doesn't need that much training volume. Got into powerlifting again. Was super lucky to find a super good coach there. Like guy in the mid-50s, multiple world champion titles. Yeah, and I could train with him for like 3 years. So started doing that. Won like a national European title in the junior categories, like below 23. But again, at some point, squatting, deadlifting, and bench pressing got too boring. But I was still doing it. Watching a Netflix documentary and saw like a documentary about the CrossFit Games and said, okay, that's it. Let's do it. I'm a good endurance athlete. I'm like kind of strong. So let's attack that. So got into CrossFit. I find another pretty good coach there that took over. So I was really lucky with that all the time. And yeah, after that, started doing CrossFit for a few years. I think like 3 years competitive on a okay-ish decent level. I think I was pretty young. I was still pretty young with like 23 at that point. And I think now we are at the point where like we two met up, because I think 2020 I had a little ankle injury that happened in training. Was laying in my
Jumping off,
bed,
jump,
scrolling on
jumping off the
Instagram.
rope, jumping off the rope,
Yes.
wasn't it? I actually, it's funny. Just a side note. I was talking to one of the ladies who's like the I guess media person for HYROX North, and she's coming over here to compete in the CrossFit Games on a teams thing this weekend. But she did the exact same thing. She broke her ankle jumping down off of coming off of a rope. And I
Yeah.
just remember you've warned me before. You saw me doing rope climbs, and you messaged me, and you're like, "Hey, watch your feet. Like, do not jump down from that rope, or you're gonna mess your ankles
Happens
up."
to the best. Happens to the best. No. Yeah. I mean, that happens. I was back in the gym the next day, but obviously couldn't do anything I wanted to do back then. We have been training for the CrossFit German Throwdown, but couldn't attack that. So I was looking for something else to do, scrolling through Instagram, and then saw that HYROX like is bringing up the virtual championships. And back then I said, okay, that's something we can do. Probably no jumping or whatever. Let's see what is going to happen. So just signed up, got into that. As you said, won that one. And that was my first contact with HYROX. I think we beat some good names in that online competition in the equipped division. And after that, I just got soaked basically into that HYROX world and couldn't stop that. I mean, obviously got invited to the Elite 12 race 2020, which was basically the World Championships at that year. We just raced with 6 guys, 6 girls, all out indoors on like those curved treadmills. No people in that venue. And it was my first HYROX race. Yeah, so December 2020, basically did my first one at the World Championships. And I think, as most people, just totally, messed up my training and lead up to that. These days, I'm super thankful for that, because I think I learned a lot from it, and a lot of people see themselves like in that position. So yeah, I think that's really it. Got into that. The year later, 2021, we two raced the Elite 20 race back then in Germany. And yeah, I think we both got some more races under the belt since then. So now, like 3.5, 4 years later, we're sitting here. A lot happens, yeah.
Yeah, it has been a crazy, last 3 4 years. Then we looked at, man, we just completely glossed over, racing the Elite 20 race together, and then, and then the most painful doubles race. Uh,
3 hours
so
later.
yeah, I think the bond between Marcus and I came from the doubles race that we did about 3 hours after the Elite 20 race. Um, I'll never forget. I was trying to jog from the hotel to the venue with about 45 minutes to go, and we had to stop 3 or 4 times because both of us couldn't quit cramping. And we were like, we're gonna have to race, and we can't jog a kilometer and a half to get to the race venue without cramping up. And that was the worst race. We didn't even have a timing chip. They were just like, yeah, you can just go do it. It was back when
Story
Hyrox
was
was
we
just
finished. We finished that race. After the finish line, we said, hey, shall we do another one today? So we walked over to Mindra Tilley, the sporting director of HYROX, and we asked her, hey, Mindra, can we race doubles today? And she said, yeah, of course you can, but without a timing chip, without being in the rankings. And we said, okay,
yeah.
let's do it. Let's have some fun. Worst idea to date, but
Oh,
good
it,
experience.
it was I can distinctly just remember running and going, Marcus, are you okay? And you go, no, but I will make it. And that was basically the motto of that. And that was the same. And then you went that night, And that night was it turned into your
It was my
birthday.
birthday.
Yep, his birthday present was getting absolutely demolished by a doubles race.
I think we were sitting outside with a lot of people. I had like one beer and I had to leave, right?
We were so done for. It was a one beer night, and then it's time to go lay down and eat bread, and go to sleep. That was a long day.
Yes, it was a good one. Yeah. I mean, that's the sporting sport background of me, but I think much more important here is like what happened with TFM and what happened after that. Because I think that especially that season was the last one I really competed. 2021, 2022. Did some races in that season. Prepped for the next one. And back then I was working basically in a gym. We opened the gym up with a friend. We did personal training in there and stuff. But due to the elite races and everything, people started asking me, okay, hey, do you offer online coaching? Do you do something? And I started coaching some athletes online, but that wasn't really the focus at that point at the end of 2021. I took the few weeks, a few months after that to just basically let that idea grow to start online coaching. But it took me basically a few months to figure out what I exactly want to do and how I want to attack that. I was looking for gaps. When we speak about the fitness side, the business side of things. I was I spent a lot of time thinking about what kind of coaching I would enjoy and what helped me the most in the past with my coaches. And I came to the conclusion that basically working with like individual programs and coaches that had a pretty close contact to me was always the thing that just builded the fittest myself I've been in different sports, or the fittest athlete I have been. Standardized programs never worked really well for me, or when I didn't have a lot of contact with a coach, it never worked really well for me in younger ages. So I said, okay, we want to bring something that helps, especially HYROX athletes, to get better, but deliver something that I have experienced in the past with my coaches, but on a worldwide view. And I said, okay, if we do something like that, we have to obviously program online because we don't have all the athletes in my city. But I said, okay, we want to have a close contact. So I said, okay, we definitely want to have chats with our athletes. We definitely want to have online calls on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, at least, with our athletes. So like 25 months ago, I brought out TFM. I think that was end of June 2022. Started that one. People started to sign up, and at that time it was still like the focus to go into the next season and swing the hammer and make it back into the elite. But as you know the story I always talked with you about everything, the coaching side of things, private side of things. I flew over to a trip to Asia, 6 weeks to meet my friend Callum, race some Spartan races and stuff over there. Big trip was planned. I arrived there, second day, I was COVID positive, and it just knocked me off like completely. I've never experienced something like that. And that basically stopped the next whole season. So not that I had like real long COVID symptoms, but just something was off with my immune system and I didn't know what was going on. I just got sick every second, third week, got inflammations and stuff. So I was trained for like 2 weeks and had to take a week or two off. And I said, okay, I'm not really enjoying training at the moment and I can't handle it. So, like the online coaching is the thing I should focus on. And that was like still in Asia. But at one of the last nights, like sitting on his balcony, sounds like a Hollywood movie, but that is what happened. Sitting on a balcony, 50th level or something like that, watching at Kuala Lumpur. I just sat in the middle of the night, okay, when I'm back home, I'm not going back to the gym and do PT anymore. We take the next month and really focus on the online. the online stuff, and that is what happened. So I came back really focused on coaching, not on being an athlete. So really focused on being the best possible coach for the TFM athletes, not the best possible athlete I can be. And then things just started, yeah. And that is what basically happened the last 2 years. So we grew the business, we grew the coaching to big number of athletes. I think we qualified, nearly 90 athletes to the HYROX World Championships over the last 2 seasons. We had a lot of podiums at the HYROX and Dakar World Championships, Spartan Ultra World Championships, a lot of success. But I think especially because we've really focused on that, on athlete development, on everything we do with the coaching. I think obviously the coaching changed a lot in the last 2 years. My mindset changed a lot. The way of coaching changed a lot. But I'm really enjoying it. Yeah. And I'm super thankful that everything happened that way, that everything is the way it is, that we can make a living from it. I think that was always the goal after we started that. And I'm just looking forward to the future and what is happening with TFM, especially now where I'm not anymore alone into that. People are making money out of that coaching. It's not just me. So I'm basically more motivated than ever to put in the work there. Yeah.
Well, it's so like the same way, we both had things happen in our career as athletes that took us out for a while. That
Yeah.
at pivotal points. So for me, like getting hurt going into college, I was all in on a collegiate career to be able to compete, and then that just goes away. For you, you're coming off having success in HYROX, and then you end up having like this bout of, a year plus every time you would go to train. And I mean, outside of talking to each other, like professionally, we'd always talk as friends, and it would always be you get 2, maybe 3 weeks of training, and then you're sick again. And unfortunately, that really hampered you, as an athlete. Now, one of the things that, as a coach, the fact that you walk through all of the different things that you did. So you had, a background in cycling, and then you go powerlifting, and then you go CrossFit. Well, through all of that, you learn a lot of different training methodologies, and you learn different things that work to develop different aspects as an athlete. And so that was one of the things that when you started TFM and started coaching, whenever people would message me and ask about coaching, I would immediately send them to you, because I was like, this guy, he has been through multiple different training philosophies and experienced things as athletes that is going to be super helpful when it comes to working with somebody to develop them. Um, and then through speaking with that, so the same time period that I went through, being injured and hurt, I really laid into, just a lot of reading about physiology, anatomy, training. And I had like a 3-year expedited block of just reading and reading and
Mhm.
reading and reading. And a lot of that time is what built the foundation for me figuring out how to program, because I've written, as I got into the sport, I programmed for myself from day one all the way up until now. And the good thing about HYROX is it is a fixed test. We've seen things change with regards to what parts of the race are a little bit harder, like the sleds getting a little bit faster, and things moving a little differently. And that allows you to tweak your training a little bit. But when you have a fixed test and you're able to experience it over years, you start to learn how to create training stimulus that
Mhm.
really reflects the race for your athletes. Um, so I think that looking at TFM and looking at us as coaches as a part of it, I don't want to say like, we're both two 28-year-old guys. I don't want to say, hey, there's a wealth of knowledge there, but there's a lot of experience, in us two 28-year-old guys working with athletes. And you've worked, I believe, you've worked with people across the fitness spectrum, have you not? Some people who are extremely, extremely fit, and some people who are like just getting into stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not just in the hybrid world. I mean, I think we went a bit over that, but I started coaching in the gym at the age of 18. So now we are sitting at like 10 years of working in the fitness space, and basically worked with every kind of people, from the grandma that is 80 years old and just wants to move a bit and gets healthy after surgery, to high level athletes, obviously now in the hybrid world. And I feel like that's what I love, not just working with like one kind of people or athletes. I love to have the mix, and I love to see the progress no matter with which kind of person. I think that is like one point that is driving me to just see the success, because I think always those good athletes are on the spotlight, but I think we always forget those people that are putting in the work day in and day out, having 2, 3 kids at home, business or a full-time job, working 2 jobs, things like that. And what is fun is to show them, hey, even with like lower volume and with the right training structure, you can get better, you can get faster. You don't have to train like the elites, and you don't have to be like an elite athlete in that sport. I think you just try to be like the elite version of yourself in the end, and not compare yourself to other people. And I think that's what it's all about in the end, right?
As you were saying, working, with athletes across the spectrum, I think one thing that's really important for coaches to understand is you might be working with an athlete who's not going to be an elite 15 person, all right, who's not going to be top in the sport. But don't mistake that for not thinking that they don't care, because those athletes, like, I've seen more devotion to the sport and more devotion to training from athletes who are, pushing to try to qualify as an age group person than you might see from some of the best out there. Um, Athletes who are never going to stand on top of the podium as a world champion will outwork some of the people who might. Um, and I've definitely seen that. So like when you're looking, it's just a mistake that I think coaches can make, and that I saw with college coaches, in that they would pay a lot of attention to their top athletes. And I understand that your top athletes are winning you things, but would completely gloss over or neglect some of the athletes that they're not as good, they're not as successful, but man, they're fucking working. And just wouldn't give them the credit that's due. So that's one of the things that I like to, pay attention to, because I have athletes you know, in our training that I'm working with who are on the cusp of pushing into the Elite 15. At this point, I'm coaching athletes that have raced at the World Championship. I'm working with Tara right now. I'm working with Tyler right now. And those two right there have big aspirations. And at the same time, I'm working with individuals who are, what they're looking for is, I want to try to make it as an age grouper. And when I sit down to write programs, and when I'm talking with them and communicating with them, you better believe that the same amount of effort that's going into the programs for Tyler and for Tara and for anybody who is at the top end, that same amount is going in for that individual who is, hey, I'm just a regular person. I'm getting into HYROX. I want to figure out how to race. I want to see what's the best I can get out of myself, because they deserve that same level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the philosophy you should have as a coach working with athletes on all levels, right? Like there shouldn't be a difference between an elite level athlete and an age group athlete. Basically the
Yeah,
same. And I think we have the same philosophy when it comes down to that, right? Just putting in the work. Because in the end, I think just that whole coaching thing doesn't live from the elite athletes, right? The whole coaching thing, is not up to our success we are having in races. And I think that's something I had to learn in the last 2 years. Like, thankfully, it's up to like the success stories of our athletes, and nothing else, nothing less in the end, right? I think we have seen a few standout like athlete transformations in the last like 1 to 2 years, like TFM athletes. I'm super proud about that. Like, people are crushing it. It's wild.
Dude, it's fun, and like I've been a part, like I said, I've been a part of TFM for not a particularly long time, and wasn't able to be as involved during World Championships back in June as I would have liked to have been. But as this
Yeah.
continues to grow, I look at the majors that are coming up, and the races that I'll travel to because I would say predominantly more of the TFM athletes are in the European area, than over here
Hmm.
in the States, but what's cool about creating a community like that is you get together and you get to meet, this is the person that I've been coaching who lives over in the Netherlands. And we finally get to meet up and spend some time together. And so you're not just building an athlete who's going to go out and race. You're building a relationship with somebody in a different part of the world. And every athlete you work with, not only do you grow them as an athlete, they grow you as a person. Because all of those
Hmm.
relationships are super important. So I think it's big to you treat a coaching relationship as closely as the athlete will want it. But I believe that there's a level of you should get to know and be friends with the people that you're coaching. They're not a number, they're not just a client or anything like that. They're a human being with goals and aspirations and emotions. And if you don't understand those, you can't coach them properly.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that's in the end the reason why we try to have so much contact with the athletes. And I mean, I spoke with you about that the last 2 years that like I feel like it's super, super important to have that close connection because just based on like a little training notes or just by sending out a training program, you don't get to know the athlete you're coaching. Like you don't know what's going on in their life. And that's the reason why I like to have that close contact to the athletes via chat, via calls. I think especially I'm focusing on the calls, speaking with the athletes, like about everything else but training. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what I love, just that close connection. And I think in the end, that's why everything was and is so successful. It's not just born out of thin air. We put it in a lot of hours, and I think everything is just a product of passion, dedication, and just a vision to like have a different coaching approach. Um, Real talk, not always easy to do that. I think we're always open to athletes, and I think it's not always easy to balance trying to being an elite athlete at the age of like 28, right? And knowing you have 5, 6, 7, 8 years to maybe be a world champion or something like that, or be on a high level in the sport and running a business. And I think it's nothing bad to like trying to make money and making a living out from what you love in the end, right? But it's always a balancing act where I personally had to like learn and find a balance over the last 2 years. Where it's like, okay, now we are at a point where I'm now feeling good going back into competitive racing after like 2 years, and I know I can balance those things out. I can definitely say a year or two ago, I wasn't able to do that. So I think I learned a lot of things over the last 2 years. Yeah, just to the whole process, to the open talks with my athletes and everything. So looking forward to the future there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, whenever you're growing something like a business or something like that, if you're gonna do it well, you can't you can only burn the candle so much before you're like, all right, I just don't have that capacity there. And when you're trying to be top level, best in the world at something, or even close to that, and then at the same time grow a business, and at the same time, maintain the relationships that are important to you in life, it's almost impossible. And something has to take a back seat for a period of time. Um, and so like I'm excited. I'm excited that you're now at a place that you can start to train more consistently. And the same way that we spoke in the past about training philosophies and stuff, we're looking at your training now and you run it past me. You're like, hey, I'm gonna do this and this. What do you think? And it's good to have that kind of relationship because not only are we coaching other people, we kind of coach each other to a degree. Um, and so I think maybe what to end on would be kind of our training philosophy as coaches. and what people would expect, working within a TFM system. I
Yeah.
would say I'll start from my end. As people have
Mm.
seen, I'm a big believer in you have to have a base as an athlete to be competitive, not just in the short term, but for long-term development. I think that a race like HYROX does benefit from having a huge aerobic base that you can play off of. And then what you do is you spend a long period of time developing that aerobic base and muscular endurance through either long work on the bike or on the ergs or with all of these pencils my son is handing me right now. And then after that, what you do is you refine your power output and you have to create basically four components of a HYROX athlete. You need somebody who can run fast. You need somebody who can move sleds well. You need somebody who is good on a rower because I think that that's a great test of full body fitness. And then you need somebody who can lunge heavy. And if you can do those four things as an athlete, I think you can come out and you can crush a HYROX. And that's the way that I kind of work on myself. And for a lot of my athletes, I work on them the same way. We're going to build a base, we're going to refine it, we're going to work on power output. And we want to take a HYROX and we want to turn it from no, 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 no. We want to turn it from no, 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 no
To
into
yes, yes, yes.
into yes, 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 yes. He understands. But yeah, that's kind of the training philosophy from my side. So if you want to give people some insight into how you approach things.
Yeah, I think we have the same coaching philosophy and training philosophy in the end. And that's the reason why I love to have you on. I know how you train, and as I said, there's much more behind you than 80K rowing week and all those endless workouts. I think back in like 2021, we just sent us random workouts every day, crushed our souls. And I think at that age, you can do it, right? But I think now it's really up to just the individual athlete. I mean, as I've said, I think like I always had the best progress when I had coaches programming individually for me. So um, that's the reason why we really focus on that with TFM. Like, I mean, we have some group coachings, but I think like the much bigger portion of what we do as coaches is the individual coaching and attack it basically and pretty close to you. I think there are not a lot of differences in training. As you know, we are not giving our athletes the same volume we are doing in random workouts. There's always a reason behind it. And I think we always make sure the athletes know the reason. But I think overall, at least I am always try to just build the best overall athlete we can build in the off season in terms of running, in terms of strengths, in terms of conditioning and all those single pieces, not in terms of HYROX, just being the best social media would say hybrid athlete we can be, with good power output, good running speed. And from there, we jump into the season and attack all those little weaknesses the athletes have, going through different phases, working on different things, but especially focusing on the weaknesses of the athlete. So, I mean, if we have a strength athlete, we obviously have to focus on the endurance side of things and the opposite. I think that's a topic for a whole episode or two themselves. But I think the approach is, yeah, overall fittest athlete wins in the end, I think. And then a lot of key components are coming in there. But I think those would just extend the episode too much. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that that's kind of a good place to finish off our first episode.
Yeah.
I would say I hope that people walk away from this knowing you and I a little bit better, our backgrounds, how we met, how the TFM started, what we want this to be as it grows, and how we want to kind of help develop athletes who end up joining on into the program.
Yeah. I think in future episodes, we want to go through everything HYROX and hybrid, speaking about different topics, speaking about races, speaking about whatever in our training, giving you like big insights into what is happening with us, what is happening with the TFM athletes, not just podcasts. I think also some vlogs of some races are going to follow with us and with some TFM members that don't know about it yet. And that's the reason why we are just sharing that on YouTube. So yeah, we hope you understand. And yeah, hope to see you guys pretty soon. Hopefully next week if we can make it. And yeah, if you want to learn more about TFM, just have a look at the description. You find all the links there to our Instagram channels, Dylan, mine, TFM's, to our website and everything else. And if you have any questions, just leave us a comment, shoot us a message, or just call August. I think he also knows a lot about that stuff.
Honestly, I've seen his we need to have August take over like mobility work, because his squat depth that he's able to get to, his ankle mobility, flawless. He's our lead
He's killing
mobility
it.
specialist, for TFM.
Yeah. That's amazing. Cool, man. All right, then I would say thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and hear us soon.
All right, August, can you say bye bye? Say
August,
bye bye.
bye bye.